folks, welcome back to another episode of the Field and Garden Podcast. It is your friend Lisa Mason Ziegler coming to you here, and I just really appreciate you joining me because, again, I know you have a lot of choices, and I just hope that what we're sharing here on our podcast is helpful to you in some way. And if you're interested in more of the work that the Gardener's Workshop is doing, which is constantly evolving, y'all, I just can't hardly even believe it. You can learn it all over at thegardenersworkshop.com. That's kind of home base for us. I am very active on social media, as well as a YouTube channel, as well as our website is full of lots of resources. And I just hope that you find it helpful in some way on this journey that you're on, perhaps, of being or becoming or exiting being a flower farmer, because we have people at all stages, friends. And so today, the topic I've chosen, it's kind of like I sit down here and I think, so what is happening right now with me on this farm and my friends and what I'm seeing on social media? And it immediately came to pass for me, the full circle of flower farming. And what I mean by that is there is definitely, even though you may not hear this, but I'm pretty sure you do, what do I hear from people when I would tell them, they'd say, oh, what do you do? I'd say, well, I'm a flower farmer. And in fact, I stopped saying that about 10 years ago because it created too much conversation. But I would say a flower farmer, and after I answered what that is, they would say, well, what do you do all winter, right? And I would have to kind of explain that, in fact, being a flower farmer, the obvious parts of my job are in the season of harvest, but we definitely have lots of stuff going on the rest of the time. And this is not talking about that specifically, but kind of. So what I'm thinking about is, as we are heading into, I'm recording this at the beginning of May, and I am located in southeastern Virginia, which is winter hardiness zone as far as the USDA is concerned, zone 8A/7B. Used to be 7B. And we've creeped into 8A as the world is changing, right? And what that means for me is that we are heading into the dicey time of the season for me. And it's because the layers of this life, this career, this job, this dream, whatever it is that you have, is about to get really, really deep. And I like to think of it that way. There is a 12-month year-round layer to this. Top of that list for me are the bills. You have to have, there's expenses that are incurred or paid year-round, regardless of what your harvesting income season is. But with each passing week and month, these layers are getting deeper and deeper in whether it's a garden or actually a farm. So first out of the gate, the first thing I think of is this time of the year, I am coming off of March and April that, the cool flowers, which are the cool season hardy annuals. Cool flowers is the name of my book about those groups of flowers. The cool flowers that were fall planted and very early spring planted, which is about 8 weeks before my last frost date. So for me, that was mid-February. So all of those plantings have just been sitting out there all winter, looking like they're freezing their buns off, but they're really just building a great network underground, right? So my farming work, other than the brain things that I have to do indoors, has been walking the farm with Tucker, pulling a weed here, pulling a weed there, because I tend to do one of two things, particularly with winter. I shouldn't say that winter. Cool season hardy annuals. Sorry, y'all. Stammered a little bit there. I tend to tend my beds or to create my beds in one of two ways. Either it's direct seeded, which there's only a couple of those, and I am very regular about using our hoe in those in the fall, going into winter to extinguish any developing weeds. So there isn't a lot of weed pressure is what I'm getting to there, because during the cold of winter, those cool season weeds don't do a lot of growing, particularly if you eliminate them in the fall. And then the other choice I have is that my transplanted beds were all planted into Bio 360 with the black side up. What that means is that those cool season weeds never really got a start except in the holes where the transplants are planted, and we call that hole weeding. And there's not a lot of that. So my walks around the farm during February and March and even in early April are kind of dreamy. I'll stop and pull a weed here, pull a weed there, because it's not a sit-down hour job. And we try to prevent those from ever happening, but the reality of that is it doesn't always work out. And the weed prevention is paying off during that time. And so that time is about to leave. It's about ready to exit for me, because the layers are about to increase. So cool season hardy annuals are about to come on strong, and I'm already experiencing that. Those really early crops that for me this year, because I don't have a full cool flower garden planted this year, because this is our first year of non-production, meaning we're not selling our flowers. My garden was planted with a different intention for photography and learning and teaching. So not everybody is planted out there. But those early crops for me this year are all those different bachelor buttons that were growing this year, which I will tell you guys are scrumptious. Oh my gosh. The fantastic, the magic, and the romance mixes, which you'll find all those on our website, which are these mixed colors, and the blooms are bicolored. Oh my gosh. Anyway, the annual baby's breath, the snapdragons are coming in. So I'm already feeling the overwhelm of getting those flowers harvested, even though it's nothing like what it used to be, right? The other thing that I'm really feeling the pressure on, or another layer that's coming on, is those cool flowers, which are basically all of them. You may not know this about me, but I tend to try to set myself up for success all the time. I rarely complete that. And one of those steps is flower support netting. If you don't net your flowers, you're at risk every time a torrential rain or a rain comes. It's not really the wind factor. It is the rain factor around here. Just pounds them to the ground. When those flowers are tall and they have buds or are beginning to open, the weight at the top of those tall stems is very, very vulnerable. And so when you don't net, or when I don't net, oh my gosh, it's like every time it rains, I think, oh boy, I bet this is the end of that. For instance, this particular year, the bachelor buttons, the agrostemma, did not get netted. As usual, it got away from me, meaning it got too tall, too quick before I thought, oh, I better get that netted. And every time it rains, some of the bachelor buttons go down. So, and I just cut them at ground level to keep that area going. But it's a waste, and I have time to do that now. I would not have had time to have done that when we were in high production. So the netting is a new layer, support. Everything is starting to pop up and grow, and it's time. And the reality of, this is the other thing, this is the really big challenge that I'm facing right now, is the reality of sticking to our seed starting schedule. I am so blessed to have a seed starter who is Bobo, meaning that is her part of her job description. We started this in mid-February, and that is a big part of her job until we put that area of the farm to bed in November. Is that seed starting is at the forefront of her position here on the farm. And here's what we're suffering from. As my business, as I've previously mentioned, is really developing and changing and has so many new exciting pieces, what we're actually planting and how much of it and which varieties has really evolved from me just planting for high production, for commercial customers, for bouquets, for those types of things. And our seed schedule is not as well thought out and planned as it used to be. And this may be true for you as a flower farmer. It's like as you are no longer just having a little hobby garden, perhaps, you're now trying to plan your garden for producing subscription bouquets or going to the farmer's market. I feel the pain is real, y'all. I have the same challenges. It's like figuring out a new plan. I am right now in May saying to myself, kicking myself, pinching myself and saying, why in the heck did I not sit down in January and really close the door and block the world out and say, all right, what am I going to need this season? What is my point? What is my why? What do I need to plan for flowers for that? And I did do that a little bit, but I did not give it a front seat position. And that hiccup is coming into reality right now because the seed schedule is not, normally in years past, oh my gosh, almost the entire year, Bobo could flip through and figure out what she needs to write down on a list, what needs to be ordered for seed for her to have. It's like all the zinnias, all the coxcomb, all the sunflowers. She could come up and say, we need 8,000 of orange sunflowers. We need 10,000 Benaries orange, my favorite color, or salmon for the entire season. Do you see what I mean? Having a little bit of structure does so much to help you. And right now, I am at the forefront of this new way for us, as I know so many of you are facing coming into flower farming. So I just wanted, this is really a lament, y'all, of, we're all suffering at different pain points. So this lack of planning is really kind of coming full circle for me now. And that is just one of the things that I try to help my students with so much is to stick. It seems so simple. It seems too simple to really have a meaningful long haul impact. And I'm here to say again, friends, that it is those simple, foundational, basic steps that are the foundation of your successful business. So true. So very, very true. So the rest of this full circle reality that we're on the brink of is that as I am heading into late spring, early summer, the reality is coming in that the heat is on the horizon. Here where I am, we get heat and humidity, which undermines everything. You have to start earlier. You have to be more organized so you can be more efficient. And the weather plays a major role in this. I can remember when we were in high production, meaning we had 4 to 6 people harvesting. Here on my little farm, you'll have to remember that at the maximum, my entire property is a little less than 3 acres. And even when I was in full production of that, there was only 1.5 acres of actual working cutting garden. Now, that does not include my hydrangea grove, some of the areas that most people would consider like the landscape part of my farm. There was some shrubs and things in those areas, but we had an acre and a half of a working cutting garden, which keep in mind that typically that garden was broken into thirds, meaning that this third, which would be a half an acre, is in production right now. That's where we're cutting from. That's the main push of where our flowers are coming out of. Another third was being either planted or in another, being torn down. And the other third is coming along, meaning it's planted and is going to be ready to cut not too long from now. So we really only our main harvest was only coming from a third of our farm at that time. And we're producing 10 to 15,000 stems of flowers a week. That is a lot. And when you have that many flowers to cut and it is hot and humid, you have got to be organized because the morale of your harvesters depends on it. Let me tell you how hard it is to go back out in the garden after lunch. We eat lunch at 12 o'clock no matter what. These people's stomachs are on a time clock. And at 12 o'clock, we stop, we eat for 30 minutes and hydrate and sit in the shade or sit in the air conditioning. And then the rest of the day comes on, which we only work till 2. We work from 6 to 2. Hey, folks. The Field and Garden Podcast is honored to be partnering with the Growing for Market magazine. They have been publishing practical ideas and information for direct market flower and vegetable growers for over 31 years. All the articles are written by farmers who get their hands dirty and know what they're doing. The magazine is still on the same mission as when the Flower Farmer book author Lynn Basinski founded this magazine back in 1992 to connect growers with the best ideas from other growers. There is dedicated flower content in every magazine, a decade's worth of back issues, and over 1,600 archived articles from writers like Aaron Benzenkane, Gretel Adams, Pamela and Frank Arnowski, and Jonathan and Megan Lease, all available on the website. With 10 new issues every year available on paper, digital, or both, you're guaranteed to find something to fine-tune your farm in growing for market. So if you do farmers markets, CSA, farm stands, pick your own, florist sales, or wholesaling, whether you're a commercial grower or you just want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market for the nitty-gritty details of growing, marketing, and the business of local farming. And I have a special offer for you. Use the coupon code WORKSHOP to get 25% off any subscription to the original Farmer to Farmer magazine at growingformarket.com. As the heat and humidity would come on, the organization of being able to hit the ground running exactly 6 o'clock, nobody came to work late back then. They don't now either, but meaning that everybody understood what we're talking about right now. To be able to start early, to have what you need, to know what needs to be done, and to hit the ground running meant that we would typically finish our harvests by 12 o'clock. Because in the heat and humidity, it just kills people. It kills your flowers. I mean, when you are cutting flowers and they're wilting in the bucket within 15 minutes of just being out in the heat, nobody needs to be out in that kind of heat. So the planning and the organization to be able to tackle the heat was really a reality. And here is the rest of what's getting ready to happen. The next layer of life in the big full circle of a flower farm is, guess what else is growing gangbusters as we're heading into summer? Weeds. And if you don't have your prevention game on, you are about to be taken down. And I know this from firsthand experience. Perhaps the biggest step beyond us being able to sell every flower we grew all those years, pretty much, having a great crew, having the support of my family, having the ability to do what I do, none of that would have come to pass if I had not figured out and mastered the game of weed prevention. Don't get me wrong, we still get weeds. What are weeds? It is native plants growing where you don't want them to grow. So you have to prevent them from ever being born. And, I have said to people that I totally feel like probably now it would be more like 14 years ago, 15, 16 years ago. I've been farming for almost 2.5 decades. About 8 to 10 years in, as my business was getting bigger and bigger, meaning more and more demand, is when I started looking at a bigger picture of my farming instead of like just living in the moment and living in the day of we've got to weed that bed or we've got to do something about that pathway. I started stepping back and looking at that. You'll hear people say the 30,000 foot view of what you're doing. That means to step back and look at the big picture. And I do want to say that is really important sometimes. But I didn't start to do that until I was about 8 to 10 years in. And I did that through networking with other serious flower farmers. I will tell you that. My connection at the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers, that's when I started attending conferences, being a part of that educational organization, building relationships with other people. Not other people. I have nothing against people that don't know as much as me. I'm not implying that. But being put in a position to connect with people that have been doing it longer than you and have got the same intention, meaning income, creating income, building a business, and figuring it out, changed everything for me. It allowed me to step back for that 30,000 foot actual view. And the first step for me was managing and preventing weeds, y'all. I mean, how basic is that? The cultivation, I think in my mind, it just jumped in my mind about Steve and Gretel Adams of Sunny Meadows Flower Farm. If you don't follow them, you've got to. The images are breathtaking of just the sheer volume that they grow. It just gives you goals. And Steve and Gretel, when they made the decision that they were going to be cultivators to prevent and maintain and for their weed prevention, they used tractors, very specific tractors with cultivators because they wanted to do high volume. I mean, Steve and Gretel are a married couple. This is their livelihood. This is how they earn their living. They have no other way. And they have a huge crew now. They have like 30 employees, I think. But they knew they had to, can hear Steve in my mind talking about, they knew they had to overcome the weed pressure problem to be able to move forward. And that is what I experienced too. And so I'm saying it because summer weeds have taken out more potential cut flower growers, professional cut flower growers. People underestimate it. And we are heading into that layer of farming and even gardening, y'all, of you've got to figure it out. You have got to tackle it. And for me, the only time I direct seed crops are those cool flowers that really do best, and it's the easiest in the fall. I don't direct seed any other time of the year. Everything else is transplanted. And it's number one, because of weed pressure. I can prevent weeds by planting into Bio 360. And we are on our farm, I'm always having an open mind. We're experimenting with no-till. So sometimes we are planting into mulched beds. with a variety of different mulch products, organic type products, some with Bio 360 under it as a light blocker with a little bit of mulch on top, using Bio 360 in a different manner than making beds and tucking it in. I mean, when I say making a bed, think about making your bed. You lay the Bio 360 down and you are tucking all the edges in underneath soil to seal the Bio 360 all the way around to prevent wind from getting underneath of it, which is a much simpler, and you can actually visit our website, thegardenersworkshop.com, go to the Bio 360 product page, and there are videos there. I did it by hand for years before I got a tractor with a bed maker. And what was the driving force of me making myself vulnerable and buying a tractor that could have a bed maker and a tiller to be able to make beds mechanically was to ramp up my business? It was because I saw the potential of what Bio 360 did for us laying it by hand. So back in those days, it was me and two other gals. We used a walk-behind tiller. We were making 120-foot long beds. We were making about 45 of them was the most we ever made by hand in a season, meaning a season would be cool season or early spring or early summer or midsummer at one time. And it would take us days and days and exhaustion to make those beds. But we saw the weed prevention potential. When I would make a bed with Bio 360, first off, the bed could sit there and wait for us to be ready to plant because the film, just like plastic does or just like mulch does, blocks the light from getting to the soil. So you could plant on your time instead of when you were able to make beds. We were able to make groups of beds at the convenient time for us, and then they could just sit there and wait. But I had to step back and be willing to take that plunge. And weed prevention, that's what kicked me over the edge to be able to go into high production, y'all, was mastering weed prevention. We still get areas. Let's see, I'm thinking right now. Yeah, I got a couple spots that, are a problem. And I know how, and if I think that my whole farm would be like that, as I know that you're out there. I know that you're suffering. I've been there, and I've been to farms and seen them. I don't see how people function under those conditions. Now, it's like, when you learn something new, you just want to tell everybody about it. That's how I am with weed prevention. And I'm not saying that my way is the only way. I'm saying you have to find the way for you and the way that you're going to do it. And then go for it, and go for it big. I just did a great discussion with Daniel Shavy of Pedal Pickers and Wesley Turner, his business partner in life, about it's so hard to take that plunge sometimes, but you have to make a commitment and go for it. And weed prevention is huge, y'all. It is one of the biggest, besides making money, sticking to your plan so you can make money and build your business, weed prevention is pretty amazing in that way. And so you add the layers of the seasons that we're heading into. You have the heat. You've got to overcome that. You've got to tackle the weed prevention. And you notice I keep saying prevention. It's not that we don't have time out there pulling weeds, y'all. The key is to prevent them from ever being born, because the harvesting thing is about to become your biggest monster. And then, of course, we have the rest of the story, right? You got to sell them. You have to bunch them, or you have to make bouquets. You have to deliver them. You have to do this. You have to do that. You have to manage your people. You have to manage everything and your family and have a life beyond that. And then, throw in the weather, friends, where it rains for 2 weeks straight and you can't really get to your problems. That's when you really see the systems that you've put into place save you. My weed prevention program really becomes evident when the rain comes in, and it just really accelerates everything. And you just think, oh my gosh, how bad would it be if I didn't have my system in place, right? And screws up your harvesting schedule. The layers get really cloudy then. But just think how cloudy it would be if you didn't have them. And friends, I just want to say, to close this circle, by facing all this stuff that I'm talking about and figuring it out, which obviously it's always changing. I'm the perfect example. One would think that after all this time that I would have this down to a science, and I do, as long as I kept doing the same thing every day, day after day. But guess what? As a business, if you keep doing the same thing day after day, you're going to come to a day where all of a sudden your business is stagnant, or the world changes and you can't do it that way anymore. So you have got to constantly be evolving and changing and finding new layers and finding new systems. And we all face hiccups and problems. So you have to really find a way to enjoy the journey, because the journey, it never ends. I was just reminded I'm just thinking of so many things. I look at Steve, my husband, whose family's business has been in business since 1969. And you think, golly day, and they're very successful. In 1969 till now, surely they have it down to a science. It changes all the time, y'all. It's an evolution, which is, I think, part of what folks that have the gifts and the characteristics of successful entrepreneurs thrive under those conditions. It's the challenges that keep us going. And so I want to just say, don't be discouraged, but the full circle of flower farming is challenging. That's the way it should be. That's the way it is. And you just have to keep at it, right? So friends, I am, these little revisits of me looking into the hourglass of what's going on here on my farm. The Gardener's Workshop is evolving, and there's just so much excitement, and we just love helping other people grow flowers, whether it's a little patch in your backyard that you're growing for your kitchen table, or for church flowers. Or are you are you dreaming of becoming a flower farmer? That's how it began for me, right? And that's what we're here for. We're here to help people on that journey, and always evolving to try to offer the resources that folks need to make that a reality, to come into this circle and feel like you have help and backup. We've got your back. That's what we want you to feel like. That is one of the driving forces we are constantly thinking about. And for those folks that are jumping into the flower farming or into some other flower-based business and taking our big school courses, we really pride ourselves in offering where the rubber meets the pavement, right? The facts. It's not a walk through a dreamy park. It is like, here is what you need to know from people that are doing it or have done it successfully, but how to support people beyond that. And that's what we struggle with that every day, because new struggles become apparent to us. And we just love being on this journey with you. And if you want to connect with me, I'm very active on social media. I do lives. I have a YouTube channel. You'll find me on Instagram and Facebook. And you can find all of the links to find me over at thegardenersworkshop.com, where my podcast is, my blog, our online garden shop, which is where we sell the same stuff that we're using here on our farm and that you hear me mention. And it's deep, y'all. And I appreciate you coming along for the ride. So until we meet again, friends,